All right, listeners, I think you know that we are part of the Radiotopia network, which is basically a network built on the idea that you should support the most creative, independent audio makers around. No one, and I mean no one, embodies the Radiotopia ethos more than Benjamin Walker and his show Theory of Everything. Benjamin, who I've known for a long time, has been making beautiful, personal, sprawling audio documentaries for decades that help us understand the very strange world we live in. And now he has a new series called Not All Propaganda is Art. The new series goes back to the 1950s when Western security agencies like the CIA paid artists, writers, and intellectuals to fight the cultural Cold War.
The CIA funds were free. I mean, no one was told what to say.
Gloria Steinem, activist who sees the CIA as a sort of enlightened pal or rich uncle, there is another viewpoint.
Look, if you're listening to this show, I know you like secret histories. I know you like a mix of culture and politics and shadowy figures. So what are you waiting for? Not All Propaganda is Art from Benjamin Walker. You can find it now wherever you listen or at theoryofeverythingpodcast.com. Hey everyone, Jody here. Over the next few episodes, we're going to bring you some conversations you may have missed from our show and elsewhere. These are reruns, I suppose. Someone on Twitter was like, as long as you don't call it an encore presentation, we'll forgive you. So yeah, look, we're taking a bit of an early summer break, but there's also a good chance you may have missed some of this stuff, so we'll bring you some things to listen to. Today, an episode from our sister show, Oprahdemics, which is, of course, hosted by Kellie Carter-Jackson. And we know that a lot of our listeners, a lot of you are a little more politically minded, and there is some very interesting Oprah and politics stuff happening in the news right now, namely that Dr. Mehmet Oz is the GOP candidate for Senate in Pennsylvania. His politics are, it's safe to say, very different from Oprah Winfrey's and a lot of her fans. So there's been a lot of pressure, you've probably seen this, and conversation around what role Oprah had in promoting Dr. Oz and whether she should speak out in any sort of forceful way about his candidacy. Kellie and Leah, her co-hosts, dive right into all the messiness and, for my money, have the most interesting and nuanced conversation I've heard out there about all of this. Look, if you want to think of this through the esoteric history lens, let's just imagine this show in 10 years where I would probably say in the intro something like, this day a former heart surgeon turned daytime TV heartthrob huckster turned MAGA outsider took the nomination in the GOP in one of the most politically diverse states in the country. So there you go. But yeah, I think you will like this episode if you haven't heard it. And of course, go listen to Oprahdemics. And there is an Oprahdemics live show on June 15th in New York City as part of the Tribeca Film Festival. So if you are able to get over to that, please come say hi to me, Kellie, and Leah. We will all be there. It will be very fun. June 15th, New York City, part of the Tribeca Film Festival. All right, here's the episode. Enjoy.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Oprahdemics from Radiotopia. This is the study of the Queen of Talk. We're two academics breaking down some of the most iconic episodes in the Oprah Winfrey Show. I'm your host, Kellie Carter-Jackson.
And I'm Leah Wright Rigueur. So this is an episode that we have been planning for a long time. And in fact, this is our most requested episode. It's the thing that people keep bringing up over and over and over again. And they say to us, are you going to talk about Oprah and Dr. Oz?
Yes. Yes, we are going to talk about Oprah and Dr. Oz.
We have to.
We have to. For those who don't know, Dr. Oz was Oprah's longtime go-to doctor on the show. And really, from the beginning, he received a lot of praise, but also a lot of criticism for being sort of a snake oil salesman. And now, more recently, he's gotten into politics. For those who don't know, he's gone full MAGA in the Senate race in Pennsylvania.
And you know, honestly, we've struggled a bit about how to talk about this entire thing, how to talk about Dr. Oz. And we've thought about a number of different ways to do this episode, you know, frankly, just because it's so messy and there is so much discourse out there.
Yeah. So ultimately, we decided to do this as a bit of a special episode, almost as an emergency episode, because as we tape, Dr. Oz is very much in the news with the Pennsylvania Senate primary, and it's super duper close.
So we're going to do this episode, just the two of us, no guest. We're going to dive into the messiness and try to understand all of the criticisms and also give you guys some context. And then we're going to try and bring everything we've learned about Oprah over the course of this season into the conversation.
Yeah, it's really important because it's so necessary to understand where Dr. Oz came from, how he and Oprah formed this relationship, and how that informs all the questions about how we should understand him now.
All right. So, Kellie, you ready?
Yes, let's get into it.
All right, let's go. Let's get into it.
Those of you who are unfamiliar with who Dr. Oz is, I want to sort of take us back down memory lane and really give the historical context for understanding Dr. Mehmet Oz. So Dr. Oz, before he has his television and even political career, he is a world-renowned cardiothoracic surgeon. That means he performs heart surgery. And he is super respected, award-winning as a heart surgeon. And everyone seems to sing his praises in the medical field. His patients say that, he is just beloved by them. And he's practicing at Columbia University. He's also teaching medicine. And eventually, his sort of charismatic, affable personality kind of compels him to take his show on the road a little bit. In 2001, he starts his own TV show. A lot of people don't know that. They're so familiar with him and Oprah, but he had his own TV show in 2001 called Second Opinion with Dr. Oz, in which he would bring on celebrities to talk about certain health questions or aspects with them. And his very first guest on Second Opinion with Dr. Oz is Oprah Winfrey. And on that show, they start to talk about health and they start to talk about different aspects of the body. And Oprah is so impressed by Dr. Oz that she's like, oh my gosh, we have to bring you on the show. We have to have you sort of do something similar. And what's interesting is that Dr. Oz doesn't just come on one time or 2 or 3 times. He's on the show dozens of times and really becomes a staple to the show, much like in the way that Dr. Phil does too. Do you remember, or what do you remember of Dr. Oz, Leah, when you would see him on the Oprah Winfrey show?
Okay, so there are a couple of things that I remembered about Dr. Oz. The first is that he feels really approachable and charismatic. He feels like an authority figure, an expert. He is a doctor, and I would encourage us to really think about it as we're thinking about this relationship between Dr. Oz and Oprah, to think about how we view doctors, particularly doctors who have been celebrated, who, have done groundbreaking research. We tend to view them, and they tend to view themselves as almost godlike figures, right?
Yes.
And I'm not saying that is right, but it's a well-known, I think, truism that the relationship between doctors and the world around them is one that is both complicated because of their authority, but also because of what they do. They are working with lives. But Dr. Oz brings all of that to the show. But I also remember something else about Dr. Oz, which is that when he would come on the Oprah show, right, unlike the millions of other people that tuned in, I would tune out. I was like, I don't want to watch this. This is, I'm not interested.
See, that's interesting to me because I always tuned out with Dr. Phil. I was like, not here for it. It's Tuesday, I'll pass. But like Dr. Oz, I was always like, oh, okay, what's he going to say today? And it wasn't until later that I realized, you know what? Like, I am being had here. But initially, a lot of the things that he was saying either made sense to me or made me think about things in a different way. And part of the way that Dr. Oz is so convincing, for those who don't know, especially like myself, was that he would bring on organs. Like he would bring on a heart or a lung or an omentum, which I don't know about you, Leah, but I was like, what's an omentum? I had never heard of an omentum before.
Dr. Oz says there's something inside of us that we all have that plays a key role in making us fat. So what is, and do some of us have it more than others?
Some of us have more than others,
Yeah,
yes.
I must have more than other people. Okay, so what is that thing?
Well, there's an organ that you have inside of you. We're going to teach a little bit of vocabulary today. This is a critical part of it, called the omentum. This organ literally pumps chemicals into your body, and it holds the secrets.
Dr. Oz is sort of doing characteristic Dr. Oz when he is, up on stage with Oprah, and he has a table, with sort of like blue napkins over it. And then he turns over the napkin to reveal like the organ, whether it's a heart or whether it's a part of someone's stomach.
Where is it? Where is it in your body?
It's actually hooked up to your stomach, but I did better. I brought you some. Now.
Come on. A little omentum never hurt anybody. Come on.
What I thought was incredible about this clip is, one, I had never heard of an omentum before. I was like, it's just the stomach, right? Some intestines. Like, I mean, I don't know. Had you heard of an omentum before?
No,
I'd never gone to a doctor
not.
and that doctor say, your omentum is really inflamed. I never heard someone say that to me.
I've got to show you first a normal omentum. Now, this, when this omentum is from a different kind of person. This person had a lot of fat in their belly. By the way, not hundreds of pounds of fat. This person was 30 to 40 pounds overweight.
Really?
Now, what I want to point out is you see everybody, look at you.
And again, because he's a doctor, because he's in scrubs, because he's showing you the organ, that to me, even though a lot of that is performative, it was convincing. Yeah. It was really convincing that maybe I needed to listen to him and maybe I needed to look at different perspectives of my health that I had never considered before.
Yeah, and, this is showmanship, certainly. And so on the one hand, the reason why I would tune out in part is because, I have absolutely no expertise, zero expertise in being a doctor, clearly, except being a doctor of letters, right?
PhD.
Yeah, PhD, but I'm not that kind of doctor. But there was also something about me saying, wait a second, this is not his specialty. Why is he talking to me about this? Why is he talking to me about this? But I will say this. The showmanship matters. Mm-hmm. Dr. Oz is very, very good on TV. He's very polished. He's very, charismatic. He's very outgoing, very convincing. But also, what adds to the theatrics is the way he dresses. He comes on the show and he's got on scrubs, right? Yeah. Because, of course, he's a doctor who does doctor things. He's got on gloves, probably latex gloves, or maybe they're non-latex. Maybe he's allergic to latex. I don't know. But he's got on medical gloves, and he's handling the organ, and it's there, and you're looking at it, and you're like, wow, that's a thing in my body that does things.
Yeah. And the audience responds in a way that's ooh and ah, and Oprah's putting on her gloves, and Oprah is, diving in as well. But it's funny because, we talk about clips that age well and don't age well. When I look back on a lot of the stuff that Dr. Oz did, I'm like, man, this is so fat shamey. Like, this is so fat shamey. Like, it feels very uncomfortable, especially for him to be in conversation with Oprah about this, a woman who has, publicly struggled with her weight off and on for decades. And then the way that he talks about, look at this healthy heart. Look at this fatty heart. You don't want to have this fatty heart. Like, and then everyone in the audience is sort of clutching their chest like, no, I don't want to have that fatty heart. I don't want to be, X, Y, Z. But there's a real, degradation that comes to people who are unhealthy. People who have a little extra meat on their bones as really are seen as the bane of everyone's existence in terms of how we see American health and the public health system. The problem is that you are fat. You are eating garbage. You are eating trash. And it can make you as a person feel like trash.
Right. And as we're pointing this out, I think it's worth noting that Dr. Oz is extremely fit, right? Like, he's out there. He's not just wearing scrubs. He's wearing scrubs with bulging biceps, right? He looks extremely young, he's good looking in this clip. But also, at least as we're talking about the omentum, one thing that jumped out to me is that Oprah is ripped too. Oprah's arms look super cut up.
She's fit in these segments.
Very fit. She's got her shoulders out. It almost looks like workout gear. Mm-hmm. And you're I think part of the appeal that happens when Dr. Oz comes on the show and is, talking about gross, fatness, da-da-da-da-da, is that there are people in the audience who are like, yeah, that's gross. But also they're looking at aspirational, right? So they're thinking, look at Oprah. Oprah follows Dr. Oz and she looks awesome. Right? And
Oprah eats avocados.
Right. And we already know that Oprah has the Midas touch. She's the, she has the gold touch. And that when she's recommending things, she's not just doing it from a place of judgment on high, but as a person who has embraced these things in her own life because of what she sees as her own failings. So we know that Oprah has this long history with weight, with weight struggles. She's been very open about it. We've talked about the wagon of fat and all of this stuff. And here she is putting this out here and saying, look, I've dealt with the struggles of weight. And I'm telling you, this guy right here, he knows what he's talking about.
He's legit.
She is legitimizing him.
But then when he starts to talk about other things, where I'm like, wait a second, Dr. Oz, are you a dermatologist? So there's a moment where he's talking to Oprah, and he says to Oprah, and Oprah and I have kind of the same phenotype, the same skin level darkness of melanin. And he said, Oprah, with someone with your melanin, you have a natural SPF of 500. And I hear 500, and I'm like, oh, snap. I don't need no sunblock. I don't need 500. Like, I'm good. No, friend, I am not good. I need sunblock. My children need sunblock. Like, black people need sunscreen.
Black people, if you are listening and you're a black person or you're a person with melanin in your skin, lots of melanin in your skin, you still need sunscreen.
You still need sunscreen. And I feel like there are a lot of instances in which she throws out these, like, factoids or these helpful tips or whatever. And none of it is really backed by data. You just hear him say things and you automatically believe, okay, that this is something that I should do.
Right. So it's not uncommon for something, like Dr. Oz to say, well, here's my health food checklist, right? Here are the foods that everyone should be eating. Or, here are 5 things that you absolutely have to stop eating right now, and it'll change your life. So, as I think about it, as part of like this whole health industry and craze, which really predates, Oprah, one of the things that we talk about a lot is the fact that people are looking for really simple, easy solutions. Want to lose weight? Take this pill.
Yeah, get skinny quick.
Anti-aging. Want to have a healthy heart? Drink these oils. And so it plays right into this larger industry of health and diet and self-care that actually has very little grounding in actual medical communities or science communities. And people are receptive to it because it seems like an easy fix.
And here's the thing. Dr. Oz will have these lists, which I kind of think are equivalent of like Oprah's favorite things, because immediately you hear 5 things you're supposed to eat, 5 things you're not supposed to eat. And that's going in my cart or going out of my cart. And I want to play for you this clip in which she's describing things that are helpful to eat or harmful to eat.
So antioxidants, omega-3s, fiber, and olive oil.
Exactly.
Okay. Number 4 on the checklist is one of the easiest things to start doing today. Take a multivitamin every single day. As we go to break, here's another assignment to challenge yourself. Write down the 3 foods that you're going to stop buying. Stop buying. And then list 3 healthy foods that you're going to add to your grocery list. Blueberries should be one of them, as a hint. If you put it in writing, then it becomes a commitment.
So when I hear that clip, and I'm thinking about things that are really good to eat, like whole grains or avocados, or, these aren't necessarily things that are bad. But if we are using olive oil or whole grains as a way to say, one, yes, it's good to eat these things. All right, you got me there. But eat this and you'll lose 30 pounds in 30 days. He's not necessarily saying that, but the implication is if you have this lifestyle, if you eat these things, you too can be living your best life, or the person that you want to see in the mirror, or skinny or thin, or all of those things. And I think that conflation of eating this and not that, and then equals a small waistline or equals something. It's not necessarily true at all, but people are so quick to buy into that because it's simple and it's quick.
And I also think there's, part of, again, what Oz really relies on, what Dr. Oz relies on, is that there's usually a kernel of truth wrapped in the advice. Like, yes,
you should go for a walk.
Right? You should go for a walk, right? These are basic things that are, any doctor will tell you. But then the rest, the audience is watching this as non-experts. And we're like, he's the expert. He's the doctor. He's the one with 1 million degrees. He's the one, that Oprah Winfrey, right, that Oprah Winfrey trusts.
No, that's real. And that's why I think the criticisms of Dr. Oz, while he's on the Oprah Winfrey show, certainly when he gets his own show, and definitely in the moment that we are in right now, is so critical, because we are in a moment where we have to say, wait a second, we have got to call these things out. So in 2009, when Dr. Oz starts his own show, the Dr. Oz Show, that's really when he starts to turn and dig his heels down deeper in alternative medicine, homeopathic medicine. He's pushing diet pills, these things that have, no data, are not at all FDA approved. That's what gets him trouble with the U.S. Senate, where he has to go before the Senate and testify about some of the really problematic products that he's pushing. And most likely, for ratings, more people want to watch, the more they hear these sort of outlandish things or simplistic recipes, the more people want to tune in. But Columbia University starts to raise questions. His peers are like, listen, Dr. Oz is a grifter, all right? This man is trying to make money. This man is trying to push products or sell products. This man is not holding the public's health really at the center of his show. It is all about sort of like selling or pushing product.
I was struck by in 2015, like 10 doctors, 10 physicians, write to Columbia University. They issue a strongly worded, indictment of Dr. Oz. And in the letter, while calling for Dr. Oz to be fired or to be expelled, they said that Dr. Oz had repeatedly shown disdain for science and for evidence-based medicine, manifesting an egregious lack of integrity by promoting quack treatments and cures in the interest of personal financial gain. Wow. That is the central criticism, right? That's the central criticism of Dr. Oz. And Dr. Oz decides to address it on his show. And he's
That's bold.
He's like, you know what? They have ties to this industry, and they're, they're in such and such pocket. And basically, Columbia is like, we're not touching this. We're staying out of this.
But it's not fair. It's not fair when 10 doctors can write a letter that will pretty much circulate in-house. Dr. Oz has his own show. It's not like these 10 doctors went on the show or have their own shows to really counteract the conversation. He can just say, this is noise, and dismiss it. And his audience is like, yeah. There's not a way for the counter argument to have voice and volume at the same level that Dr. Oz is dispensing his snake oil. It's so troubling, the denial and the dismissal that Dr. Oz does to his peers, to the institutions that really helped make him. But when I think about probably the greatest maker of Dr. Oz, certainly in terms of giving him this platform, it comes back to Oprah. And that has really been part of the number one grievances, or maybe I would say number two. The number one grievance is Dr. Oz and all of his shenanigans. But the number two grievance comes in with Oprah, because people credit Oprah as giving him this platform, as giving him, this microphone to push a lot of this craziness. And so we came across a tweet by Pia Glenn, which I thought was really, really good. She just says, quote, "I wish Oprah could find a way to gracefully address how she unleashed multiple medical land sharks onto society." And I think it's worth asking the question, you know, how much of this should we blame Oprah for? How much is she responsible for? Does she need to come out and sort of have a statement to address this? We know that when he started running for Senate, you know, she kind of gave like a quick one-liner, like, yes, Dr. Oz is running, vote for him if you want to, kind of thing. I mean, it was very like, did not really say much, and it was certainly not an endorsement of him, which I also think is interesting. But what should we make of this criticism?
So I want to add a little bit more context to this, Kellie. One, you know, we mentioned at the top of the show that this is, people keep asking us, they're like, when are you going to address Dr. Oz? When are you going to address it, Dr. Oz? But the criticism that we've heard from people has really fallen into two camps. And the criticism is either, you know, we can't stand Oprah and Oprah is responsible for Dr. Oz. And then there is a criticism that I think is along the lines of that really, you know, amazing Pia Glenn tweet from a few weeks ago that is constructive criticism that is said in love, right? So is from someone who really admires Oprah and really wants to wrestle with this. And, you know, I think it's a difficult question to answer when it comes to how do we deal with accountability, particularly knowing just how influential Oprah's platform is. So when you go on the Oprah Winfrey show, you're not just going on a regular daytime talk show. You're not going to get, you know, a couple sales here or there. Right? It's a life-changing experience. And in the case of Dr. Oz, but also Dr. Phil, but in the case of you know, these doctors, it does change their life even though they already have platforms of their own. It puts them in a playing field that is unrivaled by anyone except Oprah Winfrey herself. And so we both have to really wrestle with that reality, but also the truism, I think, that while Oprah can be responsible for what's on her show, she is not responsible for what these men do after they are on her show, right? And I want to bring out, I think, a little bit some of the pushback to the pushback that we've gotten, which is, why can't we hold these men, in this case, why can't we hold Dr. Oz accountable? Why are we putting this all on Oprah? And so, you know, Kellie, for me, it is difficult to really wrestle with this. I don't know. I really, you know, I've been trying to work through it, and I don't really quite know how to work through it.
I mean, it is complicated because I wish that Oprah issued a statement and said, you know, that like Dr. Oz has pushed ideas that are wrong and yada, yada, yada. In an optimistic world, sure, I wish that she would do that. I don't think that that's likely. But I also think that we are very quick to like pinpoint the people that we think create these platforms, but not also point a finger at the people that support those platforms. And if you think about the fact that, like, it's not like Dr. Oz says these things and no one cares. He's like the number 2, number 3 highest rated shows. He has an audience. He has a fan base. And that fan base is something that's like more than just pointing fingers at an individual person, but how do we look at this culture that we all live in? And how do we make sense of the fact that that capitalism is influencing a lot of our purchasing practices. 2, that our disdain for overweight people or large people is really troubling. And then I think, you know, maybe the other aspect of this is that we have been like perhaps too naive in not seeing TV as this entertainment performative place. Many people see what they see on TV and they take it for something much more serious than they should. But I don't know. I wonder, when I think about Oprah, there's part of me that says Dr. Oz is not the only one. You know, Dr. Phil is problematic. Marianne Williamson is problematic. There's stuff that Deepak Chopra says and the stuff on The Secret that I'm like, wait a minute. Like, there is a long string of people that have peddled these ideas based on either meritocracy or get-rich-quick programs or just products that just don't work, that just don't do anything, that we have not put enough of a stop to or not interrupted enough in order to say, hey, I call BS.
I think it's also about perhaps not just reflecting on Dr. Oz, but reflecting on a larger culture that did have, at different points in time, did have a platform on the Oprah Winfrey show, particularly since Oprah in the last couple of years has made it a point to mention that she's horrified by the post-truth world that we appear to live in, right? The way in which people are susceptible to the very, worst of alternative realities and beliefs. And so it seems like this is a moment. This is a moment for her to look inward. I do want to ask you a question, Kellie, because I think this gets to the heart of what we do on the show, what we're interested in, and of course, really analyzing in depth, the institution of Oprah Winfrey, which is, what does it say about Oprah's willingness to embrace this kind of charlatanism? Right, especially given her reputation, a deserved reputation for curating excellence. Right, one of the reasons that we love Oprah Winfrey is because time after time, she gives us good stuff. She gives us stuff that you're like, wow. Or we also know because of this ability to curate excellence, we know that if she recommends something, that like it's going to be on point, like those shoes are going to be hot, or in the case of Barack Obama, right? This is a politician I can trust. But in the same breath, she's also, has a real willingness to entertain snake oil salesmen. It's right?
Foolishness. You know what I think, and listen, I'm not a psychologist. We are not psychologists. My PhD is in history. But one of the through line themes that we have talked about a lot on this podcast is the theme of trauma and how Oprah Winfrey is a survivor of sexual assault from the moment she was a child to when she was a teenager. And, a lot of experts will talk about the trauma that we experience in our childhood. It manifests itself throughout our entire lives. And I think Oprah's sometimes inability to trust who has the best intentions comes from part of that. That is something that Oprah is always grappling with herself. Who can I trust? Who will not harm me? Who will not harm the public? Who is a friend and who is a foe? And what I think makes it so difficult to understand with, a lot of these other people that she has entrusted is that when they come to her, like Dr. Phil, like Dr. Oz especially, he's already been vetted by the medical community. He's already seen as a trusted person. He already had his own show or platform. And so the stakes are a lot lower to trust him because so many other people can say, yes, he saved my life. Yes, he did this heart surgery. Yes, he's amazing.
So I think part of it too, Kellie, is that, on the show we talk a lot about how Oprah is powerful, like in a true sense of the word, but also that she's an institution unto herself. And that we do hold institutions accountable. We call them out. We say, even when we love institutions, we say this is the way that they can shift, they can change. And maybe part of the problem, at least I know part of what I'm wrestling with is I don't I don't really know how to call out a powerful Black woman who I believe does care deeply about her audience, because there aren't any other models for doing it.
Absolutely,
right?
absolutely. It's so easy to cancel Mark Burnett, who created The Apprentice, and say, you created Trump, you created this monster. It's very easy to cancel someone like him. But I think what makes Oprah so complicated is that because, you know, she didn't make her money as a billionaire exploiting people in the way that we think about other billionaires. You know, she has this generosity. She has this, you know, philanthropy around her. She is beloved. And that, I think, is why it's so hard to take her to task. But that's also why I think if anyone could come out and call a spade or have a very reflective, you know, I realize now, or I've seen that, or I understand now, like Oprah could do that. I think Oprah could backtrack, and I think the public, certainly her fans, would be supportive of that because she's capable of giving apologies. We talked about this with James Fry. You know what I mean?
Right.
He didn't even deserve an apology. He did not deserve an apology. And after self-reflection, Oprah was like, you know what? I was too harsh on you. And I think we want Oprah to reflect on Dr. Oz and be like, you know, you did not call this out.
So, Kellie, I mean, if everyone is asking, well, where is Oprah? Or like the question is, why won't she like address these issues
Condemn
or
him.
speak out on this? And then ultimately, then what does that mean?
You know, so much has happened since the show has gone off the air. And so much has happened with Dr. Oz and Oprah for that matter. But I still think that it's worth coming back to. I still think that as long as Dr. Oz has a platform that people will listen to, it is worth addressing. You know, if he loses his primary and then he goes into the good dark night and we never hear from him again, then, you know, fine. But if he continues on this path of power and procurement and position and influence, then absolutely someone has to speak up. And right now, I think the only person that he might listen to is Oprah.
Interesting. I don't think that he would listen to Oprah. No.
That who do you think he'll listen to? No one.
No one.
No one. Yeah. So that brings us to the end of this emergency episode on Dr. Oz. So much discussed, and best believe we know this conversation is not exhaustive. There is so much more to say, and we want to hear from you. So if you still have thoughts about Dr. Oz, if there's something we didn't cover, please give us a shout out, hit us up on Twitter, let us know. And we'll be back next week with a brand new episode for Oprahdemics.
Radiotopia. From